I might honestly erase it because I made it too big. Okay. Dang it, this eraser is wearing very thin though. What's going on? I'm John. In this video, I'm going to be creating a map for my fantasy world. This is the very first time I've done this, and it is a completely new process for me. So I had to do a bunch of research to actually figure out what to do when you're actually mapping out a fantasy world. So I spent some time doing that, and now I'm actually ready to get started on creating the world, drawing the map. So let's first introduce you a little bit to my beautiful supplies, shall we? So I've got my eraser. And this is my other eraser potentially, but it's not very good eraser. And then my actual pencil. And there's my supplies. Oh, and also my beautiful piece of paper with a little bit of an oil stain. So that's what I've got to work with here today. But we're gonna create a cool map anyway. It should be fine. And I'm gonna transfer it over to like digital later on. So it's not really a big deal that this paper and pencils and all that are just like garbage. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is something called the beam method. And I learned this from a channel called WASD20. So I'll link the video that I learned this from if you want to check it out later. But for now, I actually have to go and get my beans because I don't have any on hand right now. So 1 second, let's go get some beans. Let's see what we got. Oh, do we not have any black beans or something? Oh, we have canned beans. Now I'm gonna dump a can on the page, that'll work. Okay, I guess I could just use rice. Let's just add rice a little bit. Okay, well, this is what we're going with. I forgot to talk about it, but the whole thing with the beam method, or what I'm gonna be using, the rice method, is that you're creating the shapes, the land masses for your world with this rice. It'll be easier if I show you than trying to explain it without showing. So, let's get into that. I'm actually gonna need more rice. 1 sec. Okay. I want them to have neighbors to the north and the west. I want them to be on the south. Oh, I wanted them to have neighbors on the southwest too. So let me migrate a little bit with this over here. It looks kind of like an elephant right now, doesn't it? There's the eye, and there's a big ear, and then there's the trunk. Well, anyway. So the main country that we're talking about is going to be here-ish. Then we have some sort of country on the south. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work. Southwest. And then we have to the east, we also have, it's just like this big base where there's like multiple tribal societies. Okay, so I think that's what we've got for now. I'm gonna add on some sort of islands or whatever later, but right now this is kind of like the main continent I'm thinking. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just go with my handy pencil. I'm just gonna outline the shape a little bit. Let's just get this basic outline where it's really light. Oh, you know what? I have other pencils actually that I can use. This is, 1 sec. Let me get another pencil that's not number 2. Okay, a new pencil has entered the scene. Let's try using this and see if I can draw nice and lightly with it. Okay, so we've got our basic outline now. So let's remove the rice and I will show you in a second here. Okay, so this is my basic starting shape. I am gonna add on some islands or something too. I wanted to go in also and just make the texture of the coast and stuff look more interesting as well. So I'm going to try and do that when I go over with like a darker sort of pass. I did get a little dark up here accidentally. There's also a lot of these little spikes, man. I think it might just be the nature of the rice because of how one grain would like stick out from others. But anyway, let's just keep going and we'll see what we can do here. Now that I'm actually looking at it, I think I might have made the continent, this main continent, a little bit too big because I do want to have other continents in the world. I just want the continent that all these characters are living in to start with to be this main continent. So I think I'm gonna get a new piece of paper. I'm gonna redraw this sort of shape that I had here a little smaller, and then I'm going to add another continent or two that are connected to it because I do want to have a world outside of this like main country and the bordering countries. So I'm going to add those in right now while I'm early on in this process. Let's actually get a new piece of paper and let's see what we can do here. And this is actually my last piece of paper. So I'm going to just redraw this other shape on the page, this other landmass, but I'm gonna make it a little smaller so that I have space for another continent or two. So I'm thinking maybe this much space will be taken by it. I'd rather have it be on this side though, because, you know, if the east is where the tribal lands and whatnot are, then it would make more sense that the west would have contact with the other countries and peoples over here on in the west side, and that would allow them to, you know, trade and whatnot. Okay, so let's just try it out over here. Okay, I switched where the light is so that I'm not blocking it with my own hand. Okay, so this is getting bigger than I thought already. Let's try and chill out a little bit. Oh wow, I made this part bigger than it was on the other map, so this doesn't make sense. Wow, so I messed up. This was supposed to be the whole length between here and here, but I extended it so much further along. I might honestly erase it because I made it too big. Okay, dang it. This eraser is wearing very thin though. Part 2, or round 2. Ta-da! Okay, so we've got one of the land masses. I think I kind of compressed it a little bit into a little bit more of a rectangular shape because some of the stuff that was poking out here before didn't really stay. I think it was because I was trying to keep it more narrow since I was trying to save space here. Probably that's why it ended up happening. Maybe I'll just come back and I'll get these parts to go in a little bit more so that way this can have its prominence like it did originally. Okay, I think it's a little better now that it has this protrusion instead of just being so flat over there. Okay, so that's what I've got for this continent. I need to create the other one and or maybe two here. And I also need to add on some islands, so I need to figure out how I'm gonna do that. But I think what I'm gonna do for this part is I'm gonna use a different tool to just get some kind of randomness, and I'm going to use this to try to come up with the other two continents. I think that I like this section down here, and I also like the part up here. So I may use those two different parts to kind of be the inspiration for the two other continents that I'm going to add. Okay, so we've got another one at the bottom here. So now I need another one. I wanted to make another one up here, but I don't know how big it's going to be, so we'll just see what we get. Okay, so I think I'm going to need to add a little bit more variety some of these places, but overall, this is what I've got so far. So I like it. I think this one has a little bit too much of a boxy shape to it. Okay, one sec. I'm gonna attempt to do a little bit of looking at this and thinking about it, and I'll get back to you in a second and tell you what I'm thinking and what I'm gonna do next. Okay, so I decided that I want to change this part up a little bit. I actually like this continent, and I like this one overall. So I might change a little bit on this side, and I might change a little bit here. So I'm just gonna experiment and try to figure out something that I like for both of those. Okay, so I like that better, as well as this. And I already like the shape of this. I like the side of this. I think I want to add a few little islands here and there, some island chains, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, so hopefully this is visible, but I added a few little islands here and there. I think I might want to add some single ones as well, but maybe over here. But I'm almost done with the islands. Okay, here we are. I think that's what we got for now. So we have our islands, we have our little continents and whatnot, and now it's time to add the next step, which is mountains. Okay, so I've chosen the style of mountains that I want to draw. Basically, in order to draw mountains, it's kind of like looking at the world, the actual real world, Earth, and trying to see, you know, where mountains form naturally. I'm not paying particular attention to plate tectonics or anything like that. I'm just trying to follow the patterns that exist in our world. Usually mountains seem to appear at least either on the coastline, or they seem to appear breaking up a continent. So that is where I'm going to be placing mountains in this world as well. So I'm going to get started on that, and we will see how it goes. Okay, so I just took a second basically to plan where the ranges are going to go. So we're going to have a range along this side, one along this side here, one along this coast up here. Then we have one coming down from the north here, and then also splitting the continent. Okay, so let's just start drawing some of these mountains here. And I decided on a specific style that I'm going to use to draw them as well, so that's what I'm going to try to stick with. Might actually make sense to start from the bottom too, because those are the lines that are in front. I'm actually going to put the other ones in first, and then I'm going to do the shading for all of them. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work when we go east to, or west to east. Well, I guess there's just going to be some that are in front and some that are in back. And that's how I'm going to get the overall shape. So let's just do the ones in front first. These ones are pretty big. This range is like the friggin' Himalayas over this world, I guess. So that's 1/2 ranges. Let's do the other smaller ones now. Oh, and I also have to shade them still, but I'm just gonna do that all at once because it's easier to just do the same repetitive motion that way. Okay, this one's another west to east sort of vibe. Okay, so that's what I got for my mountains. Do I think they're perfect? No, but I think they look pretty good. Okay, so next I'm going to be looking to adding rivers and lakes. My only thing that I would say about rivers is to make sure that they're taking the path of least resistance and that they're flowing from high ground to the coast, basically. by the path of least resistance, all I mean is that water naturally travels down the easiest path. So if you have multiple flows of water, they will merge into one larger flow rather than one larger flow splitting off. So in general, that's the rule about rivers. So make sure that they're merging as they get toward the coast rather than branching out as they get toward the coast. There's one exception, but if you look up about rivers, people talk about that, so don't worry about it. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to figure out where the rivers are going to go in this world, and let's just get right into it. Also, one more thing to keep in mind is that the elevation will determine how straight the river looks, basically. So as you start here at a very high elevation, the river is going to be flowing very quickly, but then as it flattens out and the elevation decreases, it's going to take a more curvy route down. So that is the first river, sort of, I don't know, group of rivers. We might also have a smaller one that just branches off this little area of the mountain. Okay, so now we need to put some rivers here. Not entirely sure what they're going to look like. I think we're going to have a nice lake here in the center. And that lake is going to it's going to lead another river to flow down toward this coastline. Okay, and then we're going to have some smaller rivers just flowing from the edges. Okay, so we have our rivers in the north now. And lastly, we need to figure out this large continent. I do know, well, in general, I think this is going to be more of like desert over here, because the two mountains, I think, are going to shield it from various winds that would drive rain or rain clouds in this direction. So basically the rain will end up on this side of the mountain and on this side of the mountain. So this is going to be a very dry area. These are really the big rivers. Obviously, you know, they're, well, maybe not obviously, but there might be smaller rivers and whatnot, but these are basically like the, you know, Niles, Amazons, and whatnot, Mississippis of this world. Okay, so now that I've got my rivers and mountains and land masses and all that good stuff, I'm going to actually start on figuring out where the forests are going to go. And one thing I did want to note about forests before I get started is that the way that they're formed usually, well, actually, it's easier to show on the map, so let me just show you real quick. Basically, wind blows clouds in certain directions, right? And if wind is blowing clouds against, for instance, these mountains here, then the mountains will stop the movement of some of the clouds catching the water and causing the water to end up on this side and leaving very little water ending up on the other side of the mountains. Basically, that would mean that this side would be much more dry, and this side would be a likely location for, you know, vegetation and forests. So that is how I'm going to be approaching this, and I'm going to end up putting forests here and probably other places too, but definitely alongside some of the mountains where a lot of water is present. Okay, so let's just get started on drawing these forests. I'm going to use a pretty simple style, so let's see. I guess I'll start off with some in this area. So next, I'm just going to throw these little mini tree trunks or lines in here. My pencil's not so sharp anymore, but I actually don't even have a pencil sharpener. Yeah, I'm going to switch over to the mechanical pencil just because it's easier for drawing these little lines. So there's my first little forest. Meh. I don't know how foresty this style necessarily looks, but maybe I'll get better as I try it out more and more. I want it to continue along this entire area basically. And since the rivers are splitting it up so much, it makes it kind of difficult. Let's see what we can do. So there's the last one. I think I actually am getting better at doing them. Huzzah. This is going to be a lot of forest, actually. This is why I didn't want to draw all the individual trees. Maybe the forests were cleared a little bit for cities around here in this country. And then also in this country, which is our main location. The thing is though, you would expect there to be some forest. Well, maybe here is actually not forest. Maybe it's like marshland or something. Maybe that's why only the tribes or whatever live there. Okay, so let's put a few more in here. Maybe one here and here. And then one more around here. These ones are going to be much smaller though, because I don't have that much territory to work with. Okay, so finally I have added my forests and, oh whoops, my little forest up there. Okay, so the next step is actually adding like cities and stuff, towns and whatnot. I don't actually know anything about these yet, and also, well, I have a general idea of where some might go, but I don't really know where the towns are going to go in general. Oh, and I definitely don't know any of the names. I'm not even going to bother with names right now. I'm just going to put various labels on the map to show where things are. I think I'm going to go with pretty simple labels for what the different areas are, and we'll see what comes out of it. Okay, so I'm going to start deciding where these cities and whatnot are going to go. I think that we're going to have one along this river, the main like capital of this civilization that the main characters are going to be living in basically. I think the capital is going to be right on this river. It's going to be far enough away from the coast that it's not easily attacked by the water and whatnot, and also far away enough from the forest so that it's not easily, that people can't just sneak up on the forest and then cross the river and try to attack. So I think something around like here. For capitals, I'm just going to do like stars. I haven't drawn a star in so long, since I was a little kid. Okay, so there's like a history in the world where there was a certain civilization that this group conquered. So I'm going to include that civilization as well, since that's an important location. But it's obviously not as big as this city. It's going to be like on the border because they conquered something on the border. It's going to be pretty big still. A pretty big city, but not nearly as big as the capital. I'm just going to put this like circle around the outside to indicate that it's big, or that it's not like some small little baby city. I mean, of course there's going to be more settlements on the river and whatnot. And then maybe there's like some farmland in here, and there's some settlements in there as well. So that's what we have here for now. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. I'm mostly going to figure out locations that are relevant to the actual story. Now we're going to have the other city, or the other country here that is on the southwest, and I think their capital is going to be something like maybe around here. Of course, this country will have their various cities and small little towns and whatnot, hamlets. Lastly, there's another civilization here. Maybe they live in the desert actually, which is kind of interesting. They're defended on both sides by these mountains, so I'm not really sure where their capital is going to be. Maybe their capital is on the coast because that's like where they get most of their food. Most of the cities are going to be on the coast. It's kind of like Australia, right? Nobody lives in the bush. Well, not many people live there. Okay, and then here is kind of like marshy terrain. I don't really know how I'm going to represent that. I'm not entirely sure about these areas yet at all. I don't even know who is living there necessarily. So that is interesting. I might not even bother labeling these quite yet because I haven't thought about them and they're not necessarily relevant to the story that I'm going to tell, at least in this first book. Mostly I'm trying to figure out the ones that are going to be relevant to this first book. Yeah, there is actually going to be another civilization here too, so I'm going to label them as well. And I think it makes sense to have like very natural borders. Like along this river is kind of the border between these, and then this other country, their borders are out there, you know. Maybe there was another country that was originally here on this side of the river, and that's the country that got taken over. So for now, basically, this is my finished map here. Totally blocking my face. But the main continent is here. And then these other ones, I haven't gotten too deep into developing them. I did put some general geography, but I didn't really decide anything like cities or what sort of culture lives there yet. Those areas of the world don't necessarily come into play in this first book, so I want to keep them open, and I don't want to necessarily set everything in stone over there. So for now, I'm focusing on this main continent because all the main characters actually live in one country of this continent. So for now, it doesn't really make sense to lock myself in those other places. At least I don't think so. Maybe it's also laziness. I don't really feel like coming up with all these details that I'm going to have to change in the future potentially. So for now, I'm just going to keep it like that. And the reason I wanted to make this map in general was to figure out some of the details here. I didn't really know what the geography was going to be like, so not knowing the geography means that I don't really know where the events are going to take place. I have a vague idea. Some are going to take place in this city, and some are going to take place in the capital city. And then the character that's a soldier, she might be on one front of the war that's going on, or wherever else. But until I actually figured out the details of the geography and where the other countries resided, it doesn't really make sense. So I'm happy that I did this part, because now I can go into figuring out the last few bits of the world building that I need to do for this story. So yeah, this was a really fun process actually. Of course, as somebody who really enjoys drawing, I found this really fun, although it took a long time and I'm starting to get a little bit tired here. So I am happy I made the decision not to go with individualized trees or some crazy, indicators for cities or towns or all that stuff. I kept it pretty simple with this map, but I do like the way that it looks overall, and I think that I'm going to eventually either transfer it over to the computer myself and draw it digitally myself, or get somebody else to do the drawing, because I would like to have one of these cool maps inside the front cover of the book, like you usually find. So I'm looking forward to being able to start on some world building. I'm very close to finishing the world building, which will mean that I can go back and figure out the scenes for each of the characters, and then I can actually get started writing this book. That's crazy. So I'm very happy that I took this time today to figure this stuff out. This was definitely a new process for me because I've never tried to draw a map in general, besides, like a random map in geography class or whatever. You draw those really bad maps of the world. Yeah, well, I've done that, but I've never tried to draw my own sort of world. So I'm happy that I took the time to do this, and I definitely enjoyed the drawing aspect of it. So I'm curious, how do you go about creating your own fantasy maps? Do you use some sort of digital software? Do you draw them by hand? Do you just say, somebody else please do this for me? I don't know. How do you go about doing this process? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, make sure to smash that like button so that YouTube knows to share with other writers like you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. It's so beautiful. Okay, maybe it's not that beautiful, but I like it.